think about the printing process. When or if you print, it is almost similar to writing, meaning to say that when you write, basically you will have the printing mechanism, right, which is your hand and the pen or marker, right, and then you have the printing media, which is the piece of paper. In my case, it is my whiteboard, right? So when I print here, let's say I print here, get it? Yeah, print here, right? So when you print here, what happens is that the marker actually touches the whiteboard. This is called impact printing, meaning to say that the mechanism touches the media. The printing mechanism touches the media, right? And then we have another type of printing. It's called non-impact, which means that you have a way of printing without the mechanism actually touching the media, right? First, we'll talk about non-impact printing because this happens to be very popular, right? And there are two types of impact printers that we'll talk about nowadays, today, which is the first one being the inkjet. The inkjet is the type of printer which is very popular. You go to a shop, likely you'll find an inkjet printer first before any other printers, right? So for the inkjet printer, what happens is that it actually sprays ink. Let's say you want to print I. Well, if you want to print this, what happens is that the inkjet will actually spray ink line by line. For example, you print the top part, like that, right? And the inkjet printer can print very attractive things, meaning it's quite precise, right? It's not as fast as another type of printer which is called laser, right? Which we'll discuss about now. Okay, what's the difference between laser and inkjet? The laser printer, instead of printing line by line like that using ink, basically if you want to print the letter I with the laser jet printer or laser printers, basically you get the piece of paper, you get your piece of paper inside the printer, and then the printer will recognize that this is the area that I want to print on, right? So the printer will use lighting, some kind of light, special light, so that all of the area which needs to be printed is positively charged. Right? And then the printer will just release the ink. The ink, of course, is negatively charged. Negative, negative, negative. Just imagine these as droplets of ink. And of course, the droplets of ink will get attracted to the positive part, and the positive part will get printed really quickly, reasonably quicker than this method, right? So this technology is called electrostatic reproductive technology. You can have a look at it in your slides for the proper spelling. You can look at it in your slide, right? Whereas for inkjet, basically it just sprays the ink line by line by line. Anyway, these two are of course the two most popular with regards to home printing and or small office printing, right? So this is cheaper to own. Device cost is low. Device cost is low. This one is device cost is higher. Although there are exceptions, of course. There are newer printers where this might be cheap as well, right? But print costs, this one is relatively higher compared to this one. Right? And then we talk about other things, let's say for example, in terms of how quick can they print, this is of course quicker, right? This is quick, right? Whereas this is suitable for photos, fine looking things, they are very precise like that, one by one by one, is suitable for printing photos. Not just because they're precise, this is precise as well. Lasers are precise as well. It's just that this can work with different media. Lots of media. Lots of media. Meaning you can use glossy papers, you can use photo papers, matte papers, fabric-like papers, lots of different kinds of media, as opposed to this. Laser printers, you cannot work with a lot of glossy papers, for example, because they use light, and glossy papers will refract those lights. Anyway, next we talk about impact printing, right? This is much less popular, and so you might be less familiar with this. Okay, one impact printer that we'll talk about now is the dot matrix, right? So these are the older versions of printers. They still use what's called the ribbon, ink ribbon, right? And so it is relatively very slow, right? Surprisingly, the device cost can be more expensive than these, right? It's slow, but it has its own advantages. For example, it can print on multi-part forms. What are multi-part forms? You go to the bank, for example, right? You just fill in the form once, and then you just you need 3 copies, but you fill in once. 1 copy for you, 1 copy for the bank, 1 copy for Health University, for example. That is a multi-part form. And because this printing actually strikes the paper, it can print on multi-part forms. And this is relatively cheap compared to this cartridge and this toner cartridge, ink cartridge and toner cartridge. Ink ribbon is relatively cheap, and it has its own place of usage. It is usually used at the back office, factory, and etc. So it's a more robust printer compared to these two, which are, you can say, for fine printing. But these 3 are not the only types of printers, right? Hopefully you can remember these 3. Inkjet, laserjet, dot matrix. Fairly easy, right? Okay. We also have other types of printers. For example, we have what we call photo printers, which are technically inkjet printers. The difference is that you can print straight from media, print from storage, print straight from removable storage or camera, right? Photo printers. We have thermal transfer printers. Okay, thermal transfer, as the name suggests, is the type of printer that uses heat. Right? And there are 2 types of thermal transfer printers. One is direct thermal. Direct thermal is like your movie tickets. You see, your movie tickets, it has a special kind of paper, it's slightly glossy, right? And basically the printer will just apply heat on this special kind of paper, and the letters will form there, right? The drawback of these kind of printers, which is direct thermal, is that over the long run you might lose whatever is being printed, right? But the advantage that these kind of printers can be used for mobile printing is just a small device. You just have to buy the special paper, which is slightly glossy, right? Next is thermal wax. So I'll just write them down, right? Direct and wax. Direct, thermal, and wax. Thermal wax is where you have this wax, and you apply heat to the wax, and the wax becomes liquid, and the wax becomes ink, right? So this is a special kind of thermal transfer printer. You apply to a wax, and so you can use it to print your t-shirts, right, on mugs and etc. So these can be high quality, but it can be pricey as well. Okay, thermal transfer, that is another type of printer. So now we have talked about 5 types of printers: inkjet, laser, photo, which is also an inkjet, dot matrix, thermal transfer, and then we have the last one, which is what we call plotters. Right? Plotters are these large printers which you use for map making mostly, but But nowadays we have large format printers which are not really plotters, they're just large format printers, right? So these are usually for large format printing. And when or if we say it's plotter, that means it is specifically for map making. Although we also have other large format printers which we can also use for banners, buntings, and etc. Right? And so that is the second type of output device called the printer. We've learned 6 types, right? Inkjet, laser, dot matrix, photo, thermal transfer, and plotter. Of course, there are other output devices as well, like speakers, and then there are special devices like multifunction devices,